Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Earl Stoddard. I'm an Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in the Office of the County Executive. I also have the pleasure of co-chairing with Assistant Chief Darren Frank the County Executive's Reimagining Public Safety Implementation Committee, which is going to be responsible for making sure that we implement many of the actions that you're going to hear more about today. So we're here to talk about the final report from Effective Law Enforcement for All, which is an audit that was done from an external expert organization of our police department, some of our practices that go beyond our police department around accountability, transparency, public trust, and how we implement best practices in equitable law enforcement. What we're going to do this morning is you're going to hear first from the county executive, then we'll turn it over to Mr. David Douglas from Effective Law Enforcement for All to walk through the report. And then we'll hear from some additional guests, Chief Marcus Jones from the Montgomery County Police Department and Bernice Mariku North, who chaired the Reimagining Public Safety Committee that the County Executive put together. The last thing I will say is we were here a little over a year ago, June 2021, for the interim report. This report builds on many of the recommendations that you're going to hear, that you heard about back in June, and we look forward to hearing the final conclusions from Effective Law Enforcement for All, and most importantly, we look forward to implementing many of the actions you're going to hear about. So with no further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce County Executive Mark Elrich.
So I'm very happy to be here and to get to this point with this report. It's been a while in the making. It's been very comprehensive. It took a long time to review all the body camera footage that they reviewed. It was not something you could do without spending hours in front of screens looking at the footage. So there's a lot of work that's gone into this report. I want to remind people that this decision to move in this direction was taken before George Floyd. We did not get woke when George Floyd happened. We understood that we had issues in the police department we needed to deal with, and we started working on this project early on, and I'm really happy that we've reached this point where we can actually, you have a final report and we begin the implementation. The things have already begun being implemented. We had always said that if there are things that we can do right away, we would do those things right away. Some are going to be more budget oriented, and if you're reading the report, you can kind of get an idea where that's going. The audit gives us expert recommendations about how we can improve our police department, and you're going to hear in greater detail from David Douglas from ELE 4A. And in a few minutes, I want to thank you, David, for beginning this project, sticking with this project, modifying this project, all the things it took to get us here. And I really do appreciate your partnership, and having read the report, I really appreciate the work and the recommendations that went into the report. You did not sugarcoat things that some people would have sugarcoated, but you point out the positives in the department, but you also point out the areas for improvement. I want to highlight a couple of things that I thought were most important, and maybe a little bit why. There's a lot in there about training. And training is critical to anybody's performance of their job, no matter who you are. If you're well trained, you have a better chance of performing the job well. If your training is lacking, then your actions will often reflect your training. And there are a number of times when we looked at incidents that have occurred in the time I've been here and things that went before, where you'd ask yourself, well, what if the procedures had been different? What if somebody had approached this differently? And we would always be told, well, this is how we train. This is what we do. Well, sometimes what you do is not helpful in tamping down or de-escalating situations as much as it should be. And so there's a lot of talk in here about what we need to go in training and de-escalation and understanding mental health and addiction. Just how you carry out stops, how the language you use can affect how a person responds to you. So there's a lot about training, and I'm very anxious to implement that. There's a lot about mental health. Our officers are basically feeding the largest mental health institution in the county, which is our jail. We know that over a third of the population there is probably there with mental health reasons. We know that they actually aren't supposed to be put in jail, but society has no other place to put them, like clinics or like mental health facilities. So jail becomes a mental health facility. This is not what jails were meant to be, and tying up officers and law enforcement around mental health issues is not the best use of our law enforcement officers. And I will say it has to be amazingly frustrating when people are put in jail and then released because it's determined it's a mental health issue. And they're not even going to stay out of the public. And so we return people with mental health issues right back into the public where nothing has happened that is likely to change their behavior. And that becomes a problem for all of us. It's more expensive to manage when we keep shuffling people to a jail rather than finding alternatives. So we're very interested in the county doing its part to increase services on the non-jail side, the non-policing side. Addiction services are the only way you're going to stop addicts from being addicts. Putting somebody in jail for 2 days and then having them on the street again has never been known to cure addiction. Not going to work. So we've got to figure out how we step up, and we're going to need state support. This is not a Montgomery County issue. This is an issue in every jurisdiction in this state and every place in the country where the jails have become the warehouses for people with mental health issues. We're going to take our bite at this. You will see more teams that go out and respond to incidents along with police officers. We took a step this year. It's already obvious that we don't have enough people to do it. In Silver Spring, our team could be totally consumed by homelessness issues and never be able to respond to a police call, or have to drop a homelessness issue and then be diverted to a police call. So we'll be proposing additional supports for the mental health teams. We're also going to be proposing, in this county, reestablishing mental health clinics in the community. We don't have them. There's been a lot of discussion about the school system and what they need to do, but that's only a small segment of the population, and that still relies on a student walking in to seek help from a mental health professional in the school. It doesn't involve a parent being able to discreetly bring a kid to a mental health facility and try to get them help there without having that be paraded through a school. So I'm very supportive of what the schools are doing, but we need a broader approach. Plus, not everybody with mental health issues is a high school student or younger. I know if you ask the police department or any of our mental health professionals, we have a large number of residents, more than we would care to have, who present with mental health issues. And if we can't find a way to help them, then those issues continue to be their issues, and how they work themselves out sometime is not the way we'd like them to be worked out. So we're going to try to do more on our part to make sure there are alternatives, not just an alternative person meeting you, but a service to help follow up and provide support so people don't necessarily wind up continually recycled through the prison system. A third big area in this report revolves around data collection. It revolves around what we collect, and there are serious flaws in what we collect in the way of information and our ability to analyze it and categorize it. And so we will be implementing the recommendations of the report, because data collection is what ought to be driving more of what we do. How data collection helps us understand the population that we're dealing with. If you're concerned about officers, data collection can tell you whether you're looking at disproportionality or not looking at disproportionality. But we don't have the inputs right now to be able to analyze that as much as we should. And this report highlights that as one of the major areas that we need to improve. So these are three of the things I think are some of the biggest recommendations in this report. I'm going to turn this over. I think it's turned over to David now, right? And I'll say that, we've briefed everybody on this. And the police department's been involved. Obviously, ELE 4A has been involved. FOP Lodge 35 has been involved. In fact, they were going to be at the press conference on Wednesday. They're not able to be here today, but they intended to be here on Wednesday, so I don't want anybody to think that they're not being here is out of an opposition to this. They would have been here if we'd been able to do this on Wednesday. So thank you very much, and David, carry on.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. We really appreciate your leadership and your support for this. It's easy to announce these kinds of projects, but often difficult to stick with them. But you have been a partner through this from the beginning. You've met many hours with our entire team, seeking regular updates, and every time you asked, what's next? What else do we need to do? When will you get back to me? So we really appreciate that, your leadership and your support. Chief Jones, I want to thank you as well. From the day we first met, I think I said this before, you embraced this, you welcomed it, you made everyone available to us, you've partnered with us. I want to thank you and your leadership team, all of whom engaged deeply with us. And this, what really, our takeaway was this is not so much a consultant's review, but it was really a partnership between our executives, our former law enforcement officers, and yours, talking about policing and what kind of policing everyone would like to see. And all along the way, when I would get reports, I'd be told, well, we had this discussion, and they said, that's a good idea, and they implemented it probably before I even learned about it, and certainly before it was written up. I do also want to underscore and thank FOP Lodge 35, because they've also been very supportive and offered many suggestions and contributed many ideas and that have been incorporated into our report. And last, but certainly not least, the Reimagining Task Force members. Here we have Bernice Miracle North representing them. They were instrumental in pushing this forward and have been a source of community input, and so we really also appreciate that partnership. What that all underscores is it's our report, but this is really the product of a truly collaborative effort from across all areas of Montgomery County. And what's most exciting about this from our perspective is it really demonstrates what can be achieved when the police and the public come together in an honest and authentic dialogue about what we all want, which is safe, effective, and lawful policing. So with that, let me turn to our findings. We have a very lengthy report. It's over 100 pages for so I assume no one's kind of read it through yet, but we do have copies of our cover letter as well as our executive summary, and I understand that the slides can be made available as well. So all I propose to do this morning is at a very high level, tick off our key findings and recommendations. So with that, let me get started. We looked at 6 areas. Those of you who are here when we released our preliminary report will recall that we said that our 2 most important recommendations were in the area of use of force and mental health crisis. So for today, we decided to start there. Even though logically you might start with training and do it sequentially, we wanted to start with the areas that have been the greatest concern here in Montgomery County. We look at alternative response and officer wellness, which is often an overlooked issue, but a critically important issue for safe and effective policing. And we looked at education and training, data systems, the early warning and intervention system, leadership, operations, calls for service, and recruitment and hiring. So let's just turn to use of force. Overall, the key to effective use of force is about effectively regulating and monitoring the use of force. And so what our recommendations really focus on is tightening our ability to define what use of force is, to classify use of force, to provide training on use of force, and effective internal and external oversight with respect to the use of force. So in addition to sort of tightening our definitions and our controls, we are working with the police department to improve the investigations of use of force. There's an opportunity to improve investigations and increase public trust by investigating all uses of force independently, to develop a force investigation team with special expertise in investigating serious uses of force. We recommend that administrative disciplinary investigations be conducted parallel if there's a criminal investigation, rather than waiting, because as we all know, criminal investigations can go years, and it delays sort of not only the accountability internally, but also maybe applying some of the lessons that can be used. And we've also recommended some revisions to policies and protocols consistent with our overall recommendations. If we go to the next slide. So generally, we suggest that certainly with respect to serious uses of force, they be investigated at a higher level, but that in the districts only investigate lower level uses of force to ensure objectivity, thoroughness, and overall consistency. Additional training, and we have some additional recommendations concerning the administrative intake process and reviewing body-worn camera videos, particularly as they relate to use of force. Our next set of recommendations is the mental health response. As Mark alluded to, this is not an issue that can be solved by the Montgomery County Police Department alone. Dealing with mental health crises is really an interagency challenge, and we're already working with the county, with the police department, and the relevant organizations to better coordinate the response to mental health crises. But with respect to the police department itself, generally our recommendations are to better train and equip all officers as initial responders to deal with individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. So that includes increasing mental health crisis response training for all officers, developing a special cadre of officers with additional specialized training, establishing a call code system that allows us to better classify mental health crises so that we can track and improve our ability to respond. And we have, of course, data analyses. As the county executive was saying, data is everything, and so we do have a specific section on data, but the truth is every one of these sections really depends upon more effective collection, use, and analysis of the data systems that we use to manage the practices. If we can go to the next slide. We have some additional recommendations concerning alternative response and better coordination of alternative response mechanisms. Next slide. There's a few additional recommendations here that you all will see, but I think I can go to the next slide. Officer wellness. Officer wellness, as I alluded to a moment ago, is critical, but it's just often overlooked in the broader issues we looked at. But we're not going to have effective police officers if we don't have physically and mentally healthy police officers. It's one of the most stressful jobs you can imagine, as we all know, and as we're all learning generally. Mental wellness, health and wellness is just critical to everybody. So we recommend conducting a comprehensive officer wellness needs assessment, but importantly, we also recommend adoption of an early warning and intervention system. And we put it here under officer wellness because we don't want people to think it's a disciplinary tool. What an early warning system does is it flags the kinds of issues that suggest maybe an officer is struggling, an increase in unexcused absences, things that may tell us something's going on, and it allows a supervisor to check in and intervene earlier. It can be stress issues, someone's going through a divorce, it can be alcoholism, but some of them can just be areas where an officer needs some additional training. So we are strong advocates of a robust early warning and intervention system, and as we say here, because we firmly believe and we can demonstrate that these systems save careers and save lives. Education and training. It is everything, but we are very impressed with the Montgomery County Police Department's academy. It really is a first-rate academy, and so these recommendations are intended to help make a great organization even better. Our first recommendation is to hire a civilian PhD at a senior level. It really, the training should be and considered sort of at an academy level. It should be rich. I don't even like the term training. I think it's education that we're doing with our officers. And so we believe we should raise the profile of the position of the person in charge of the academic curriculum. We do make some recommendations about strengthening training in terms of a guardian culture. I don't want to suggest that that is not a focus of the academy, but we think it can be done more broadly and deeper, and it really can be core to the identity of the Montgomery County Police Department. We recommend additional training and leadership guidance to promote inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion is the term is often used today. It's a challenge for all organizations, and again, I would say that the MCPD has already embraced this. And we just recommend expanding some annual training program to reinforce training concepts and to improve retention. Leadership, a lot here is about supervision and use of body-worn cameras. We make some specific recommendations about tightening the policies governing use of body-worn cameras when they're activated. They should be activated before the response begins, and they should be kept on throughout the whole scene, if you will. We recommend that supervisors regularly conduct random audits and reviews of body-worn cameras so that they can get a sense of what their officers are doing on the street and see opportunities for correction or counseling and improvement. We think that district commanders should review their field supervisors to make sure they're out there working closely with the officers on the street. Effective policing, frankly, depends on effective and engaged supervision, and our recommendations center around promoting that. Procedural justice is a term we use a lot. We've reviewed, as Mr. Eldridge said, many, I think 400 body-worn camera videos, and overall we found officers were polite and engaged, but we did find places where officers were brusque or rude, and those interactions really can spread through a community. So we want to closely supervise those and really ingrain in all officers concepts of procedural justice and respect in their encounters with everyone they come into contact with. Data systems, this is a big issue. It's famously said that you can't manage what you don't measure, and candidly, we think there is a lot of opportunity to both strengthen the data collection and analytics systems here, and to consolidate them so that they're more user-friendly. I think, Chief Jones, when I first met you, you said, yeah, we need to make our data systems better, both for our internal management and for public accountability. Having data systems that are user-friendly for the public promotes trust and improves the ability for the public and the police to engage collaboratively on addressing the challenges that the police will continue to confront. We believe that use of force data should be made available, obviously anonymized. Same with crisis intervention team response. You guys need a new records management system, but I think that's already underway. And I already mentioned the early warning and intervention system. Recruitment, you have a very robust recruitment program. We just have a few, I don't want to say minor recommendations, but just a few recommendations. The one that's very popular is we recommend increasing starting salary for police officers to make them more competitive in the region. The truth is recruiting police officers is a challenge nationwide, and so it requires a very aggressive recruitment program as well as retention measures. So we suggest moving to a cloud-based technology because the key to recruitment, when someone applies, you want to get on it quickly because the data tells us that often people are applying to multiple agencies, and the first one to get to them and capture them is the one that will win the competition. Similarly, on the retention side, we recommend essentially exit interviews for officers, and that ultimately, in today's environment, given the mission of police departments and the communities they serve, that emphasizing the department's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is a recruitment advantage. I hope briefly, certainly quickly, that summarizes our key recommendations. I want to emphasize, as the county executive has already said, we are already working with the police department and relevant county agencies and entities on the implementation of these recommendations. I should say that I don't think there was any opposition to any of them. Some require more work to implement than others and adjustments, but we really were impressed by the openness to all of our recommendations. We were very honored to have been selected for this work, privileged to work with everyone we have been working with, and we look forward to continuing on this journey with you. So thank you.
All right, next up we'll hear from Chief Marcus Jones about how the police department's work in already implementing some of the measures and their perceptions of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Good morning. First and foremost, I want to thank the county executive. I want to thank David and all of his staff at Effective Law Enforcement for All for their, as he noted, clearly their partnership, and also want to thank Bernice and the Reimagining Policing Task Force for all of their work. And I also want to thank Dr. Stoddard and many members of my staff and who have been involved in this extensive project for quite some time, and their willingness to be open to many of the suggestions that were brought forth, many of the ideas and how to actually implement them, and in fact, as noted, many of them have been implemented. I'll focus on that in a second. But I do really want to say that I emphasize that there are 18,000 police departments in the United States of America. And I emphasize the fact that policing is really local for every community. And every community has their demands about what do they expect of their police departments. And I think that's an important issue to highlight for the fact that Montgomery County is a very special place. I think, and there's no doubt in my entire career here, that the community is really engaged in what they want our police department to look like, what the functionality of it, and its commitment and dedication to its to the citizens. And I also want to emphasize that Montgomery County Police Department is a part of this community. There is no separation. There's not a us versus them. We are as much embedded in this community as fathers, mothers, sons and daughters, and parents, so we want to make sure that that's clearly made clear as well. For more than a year, the Montgomery County Police Department has worked closely with Effective Law Enforcement for All with one goal in mind, to improve the law enforcement services we provide to the more than 1 million residents in our county. We did this willingly and enthusiastically because we know, I know, that we are an excellent police department today, and that we must continually work to make ourselves a better one in the days and years ahead. In fact, we have already implemented some of the changes recommended in the report, particularly in the areas of training and crisis intervention. Our training will have even more focus on de-escalation and communications. We have created a new de-escalation use of force training unit for more specific focus upon these important issues. I would also note that the legislation sponsored by Councilmember Jawando that was signed by County Executive Elridge a couple of weeks ago will provide Academy graduates with instruction from Montgomery College before they begin their field training. That new curriculum will provide instruction in active listening and conflict resolution, amongst other topics. As the ELE 4A audit was being performed, the department also improved its crisis intervention program. Working with the Behavioral Health Crisis Collaboration, we are working on a response model that will help officers respond more efficiently to calls, or in some cases, as the county executive noted earlier, not responding to a call at all when more appropriate services are available. We are proceeding on some other recommendations as well, including ones dealing with early intervention, body-worn cameras, and as noted by Mr. Douglas, officer wellness. In its report, ELE 4A said, "The Montgomery County Police Department is a high-performing organization. Yet, like all high-performing organizations, there is not only opportunity for improvement, but continuous improvement is essential to maintaining pace with constantly changing environmental circumstances and public expectations." We agree. This department recently celebrated its 100th anniversary. I can safely say that over that time, the one constant in law enforcement is change. It is a vital part of the department's mission to keep up with and to stay ahead of community needs and expectations using ever-improving technology and techniques. Our response to the ELE 4A report is one way we are meeting that goal and why we will strive to meet it continually now and in the years to come. Thank you very much.
And next we'll hear from Bernice Mariku North, who co-chaired the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force.
Good morning, everyone. I am Bernice Mariku North. I am the co-chair of the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, and let me also echo my gratitude to County Executive Elridge, Chief Jones, David Douglas, and all the stakeholders, including members of my task force, to really make sure that we evolve in the way we are handling public safety in Montgomery County. And I am confident this audit is the great step that we need to get us there. It's definitely been a long time coming. Many folks in our task force have been anxiously awaiting this last leg of the work that we were charged to do as members of the task force. So we are looking forward to not only reading all 100 pages of the audit, but making sure that we come together and discuss next steps. Our community safety task force was not just a time to create recommendations, but to really hold our police department accountable, because as mentioned by Chief Jones, we're really all one Montgomery County. It's not us versus them. And we want to make sure we implemented that going forward, and this audit hopefully will help with that. Two things that I wanted to emphasize how this audit is going to help the task force. One, it really reinforced a lot of things that we already suspected happening with the police force, particularly regarding data. Countless times during our task force convenings, we always ask ourselves, well, what information do we have to base this on? And that left us frustrated sometimes. And so when we have this audit done and we have the changes going forward, particularly with data, we're going to have concrete discussions where there really isn't a lot of ambiguity as to what's going on, because the data is there for all of us to see. And we're all actively working towards progressing and evolving in the county in terms of its public safety work, because this audit is really going to help us get to that point. Now, secondly, I also want to point out that this audit is providing us with a fuller picture of public safety in Montgomery County. As mentioned before, when we were working on the task force and we didn't have the audit, a lot of it was just anecdotal evidence. And as wonderful as Montgomery County is, we are very focused on data-based solutions. And so having the data, having the conversations about the audit, particularly with the use of force and mental health, having those concrete information provided to us is going to allow us to hopefully convene very soon about next steps on how to move forward with this county. Our county is quite diverse, and it is a blessing to have that diversity. It's definitely our strength. But it's also a challenge when it comes to public safety. When you have a county that's 1 in 3 foreign-born, when it's a majority-minority county, you have to take a step back and look at the mirror as to what public safety looks like. And I'm confident, having worked with effective law enforcement change for all during our time in the task force, that they are going to do a good job, or have done a good job with the audit, giving us a full picture, really allowing us to look in the mirror and seeing what the beauty and the challenges and the improvements could be of our police department. So with that, I again thank all the stakeholders involved. I'm looking forward to next steps. I know our committee is looking forward to next steps on our task force related work, particularly when the audit is completed, because I believe that was the last leg of our work. And I thank you all for this opportunity to speak. Thank you.